Hello and welcome to Magic Gathering Strats. This is Peyton, and I'm joined by the Lovable Host.
Brennon, how y'all doing?
Good, we hope. And today we're bringing you the top 10 tiny leaders, as I have much less experience in this format than Brennon does. So I enlisted his help, and he was happy to it. Well,
Yep.
anyway, we'll start off with the honorable mentions. These are sort of my picks where I wish they would be legal in Tiny Leaders, but they aren't. And the first of which is Edric, and for obvious reasons, he's banned from here to next week. If a commander is banned in 1v1 under French rules, he's probably going to be banned in Tiny Leaders too. The ban is a card advantage engine, and it's really hard to get past just the sheer volume of cards that Edric can draw, especially in 1v1.
Yeah, it would just crush. Basically, everybody would play this card. There would be no particular reason to play another one.
Yeah, and on a similar sort of note is Talrand Sky Summoner. Now, his converted mana cost is makes him illegal for tiny leaders, but in any sort of mono blue tempo deck, the ability to just churn out drakes every turn with every counter spell, I think it would be pretty overwhelming, personally.
Yeah, you just essentially annihilate everybody in the skies.
Yeah. Evasion is pretty powerful, especially in a format like Tiny Leaders, which is fairly creature based. And last is Zur the
Right.
Enchanter. I mean, it's Zur. When his ability means you can find any enchantment in your deck in Tiny Leaders, I'm honestly pretty glad he's not legal, even though I would probably play him and smash everybody. I mean, he's evil in 1v1 normal commander. There's absolutely no way I would want to be facing him in Tiny Leaders. Now, these are the honorable mentions for actual Tiny itself and cards that didn't make the top 10, but are sort of pretty good. So, Brendan, why don't you talk about Sig River Cutthroat?
All right. Sig, he is, or she, I can never tell with these merfolk. But what you have is, like the text says, at the end of the turn, if an opponent lost three or more life this turn, you may draw a card. In black, you can often assure you're going to be doing some amount of damage, um, and you'll be gaining a lot of cards. And I think this gets an honorable mention. It's not as powerful as some of the others because what you're trying to do is rely on damage from blue and black. But if you're willing to put forth a little effort, and especially the life loss category, um,
I mean, even pointing a sign in blood at your opponent.
right, that there it is. There's some more life lost, and you can draw a card off of it. I just thought this was worth mentioning because there's so many cool interactions um, that you can do with the whole Demir.
Oh, yeah.
And even though he's probably not fast enough, I still think it's worth creating a deck around.
Almost certainly. And then you pair it with something like Ebony Owl Natsuki and just get a ton of advantage off of drawing so many cards.
Oh yeah.
The last honorable mention is Teysa Orzhov Scion, and I've played Teysa in regular EDH, and she is just a way to grind your opponent out of resources very, very fast.
Yeah, Teysa is a powerful regular commander deck, and the fact that she's only, CMC 3 makes her also, I think, a really good build around for tiny leaders. As you'll hear me say a lot of times during this, is some just aren't fast enough, and it's weird. I was talking to Peyton earlier, and it's like you have to think of this less like Commander Light and more like EDH or Highlander, whatever you want to call it.
Standard Highlander, so 100 card
Yeah.
singleton. And it's really more like your deck has to be doing the brunt of the work, and your general is
hmm
more of a little add on that you get.
Yeah, exactly. And I think once you kind of have that in your head, the whole sideboard comes into play, and you start thinking more in um, 3 games instead of just an overall winning 1 game like you would in Commander.
Yeah, and that's because Commander games with a 100 card library can drag on for hours. If you're especially with someone like Teza, where it's just recursion and control until the end of time, essentially.
Exactly.
And moving right along, we have in the number 10 slot, we have Hanna Ship's Navigator, and get a little bit of Azorius artifact and enchantment control, recursion. To me, I've never personally played with Hanna, but she seems to definitely be a way to get some efficiency out of artifacts and enchantments, particularly ones that can sacrifice themselves. So something like Perilous Myrrh with a sacrifice outlet,
Mhm.
I could see Hanna doing some real work in this way.
Oh yeah, Hannah. Hannah is one of my favorite tiny leaders. I did a video a while back with Hannah. Um, the recursion. There are several ways you can lock out your opponent, still keeping with the 3 mana restriction. Um, One of the things you can put down the enchantment that requires you to remove a card from your requires your opponent to remove a card from the graveyard to attack. But then you can just keep recycling Tormod's Crypt over and over and over again, so where they never have, they never have a graveyard, so they
Yeah,
can never
soft lock in
attack.
that way. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's that kind of pillow fort build around that I really like Hannah. Now again, is she fast enough? If you can get a combo going, you might be at low life, but I think once you have any sort of roadblock in the way of your opponent, I think you can really annoy them if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean,
But I love the pillow fort.
even in tiny leaders, when you're only playing something like 19 lands, a card like Ghostly Prison can go a long way to locking out their mana and making it
Oh
harder for
yes.
them, especially once you get them into that sort of pillow fort. And starting
Hmm.
at 30 life instead of 20 is also an extra buffer to get you there. So,
Right.
definitely. Now, moving on to a different strategy at number 9, we have Zozu the Punisher. And once again, I've played Zozu in normal EDH, and generally it's sort of like a burn. It's Ankh of Mishra on a stick. And Zozu can absolutely punish anyone playing fetch lands as well, which I know are pretty popular in tiny leaders, as a lot of the 3 color decks and 2 color decks are trying to fix their mana in that way.
Oh yeah, the 3 color decks play every fetch they can, and that will help you a lot with Mister Zozu here, because all you care about with Zozu is having 3 lands in play. After that, if your CMC average, I believe, is like 1.4 if you're playing it with a lot of burn,
Yep.
and yeah, you don't care once you have that down. Doesn't matter to you.
And even something, I mean, I've never seen this, but I know in normal EDH, I usually play a Hammer of Bagarden in my Zozu decks, which requires 5 lands to recur, and
Yeah.
that's something you wouldn't want to do in a format like Tiny Leaders, where you can just absolutely abuse the land coming into play. And if he had
Mhm.
white somewhere in his converted mana cost, then you could start blinking your opponent's lands, which would just be rude. But you can't do that, which is kind of unfortunate. But hey, it's still a pretty effective burn commander. Number
Very.
8, we have Athreos, God of Passage. He's the only god on this list, probably because Thas is kind of terrible. But
Yeah, Athreos. The reason I like Athreos so much in this deck is like Peyton mentioned earlier. It is so creature heavy. You get to recur your creatures, and yes, they may pay 3 life a few times, but they're not going to pay it 10 times. And you put any kind of sack outlet, um, you're going to get them. There's just no two ways around it. And you don't even really care if you have the devotion to make him a creature, because what you really want is recurring your creatures over and over again.
yeah, and that indestructibility in a format where it's kind of hard to get rid of. It'd be hard to get rid of Athreos. I mean, especially even if you have Deicide or something,
Hmm.
it just goes back to the command zone and you can cast them
Right.
again.
You're going to cast it again. Doesn't really matter.
Yep. Typical artifact and enchantment hate, just absolutely worthless. And you get to play it in the 2 best colors for that sort of attrition build, which are black and white.
Oh,
So
yeah.
extra props on the color scheme for Athreos. And hey, if you get enough devotion, a 5/4 vanilla, indestructible creature is not exactly something you can laugh at. So
Yeah, they don't want to be hit by it.
don't want to get too hard. Anyway, number 7, we have good old Geist of Saint Traft. Nothing like a 2/2 hexproof to, kill people. Um,
Right. Yeah, this is one of the most irritating. You will find there are not many strategies where you're going to make your commander wear pants. Um, this particular card, though, the fact that it's going to spit out those angel tokens over and over again, um, yeah, He's one of the few that you just set up your commander, or I guess I should say, you would have your commander do a lot of work, and this is one of those that the commander is going to do just that. It's going to be throwing out 4/4 bombs all the time. All you really need to do is keep sweepers away from them.
Yep.
Somehow build them up, and there are so few sweepers in this
It's
format.
CMC3. You do get access to engineered explosives,
You do.
which is, I mean, if you're playing a triple color deck, that does give you access to a sweeper, but
Hmm.
it's hexproof, and that's the only two ways, that and sack outlets. And
Right. My favorite, oh gosh, I can't think of the name now. My favorite sweeper in white is what is it? It's the X spell where you get core
Marshall coup,
soldiers.
Marshall
Yeah,
coup.
yeah, there it is. That's my favorite sweeper, but that requires a lot of mana.
Yeah, if you want to keep the tokens, you have to pay 7 mana or more for it, which is
Hmm.
a little bit difficult.
Hmm.
But it's just, I mean, I play this in normal EDH too. I have him in my what's the guy? Grand Arbiter Augustin the Fourth. I play him as a
Ah,
finisher, and I just try to lock my opponent out, get down to Geist, and you just beat them to death. Number 6 is a newer claw, excuse me, newer card in Yasova Dragonclaw. Now, I don't care if she's Surak's sister, cousin, wife, who knows, but it's an act of treason every turn on a 4/2
yes,
trampling body.
yeah. That's again, creatures are king in this format, and OMG, that's just good. You just do it over and over again. You're going to irritate your opponent. Um, they're going to have creatures out because if they don't, there's not too many other ways to win. I guess Sans Hanna, ship's navigator down there, but
Yeah.
Yasova, yeah, like you said, the act of treason on a stick is just too good.
Yeah, what happens is when you take efficient bodies and you put spell-like repeatable effects on them, that's what
Hmm.
makes the Tiny Leaders General. Because then the rest of your deck is just that's what gets it done, and the commander is the icing on the cake.
Exactly.
Number 5 is the hardest card to pronounce in Magic, Merieke Ri Berit, or something along those lines. I'm not
Close
really sure.
enough.
Yep,
I'm not going to correct you.
but pretty typical. Probably just a solid Esper commander, and this
Oh
is one of
yeah.
one of the two actual tiny leaders I've played. And one of the things that gets me quite often is that even if um, the creature that Merieke steals gets destroyed, she still doesn't untap during your untap step, and that's one of the drawbacks for me personally. But that being
Hmm.
said, it's still a creature-dominated format, and being able to steal your opponent's biggest threat and add to your own board is definitely something. And then they can't really risk killing it, because if they do, you'll just cast it again and steal another one of their guys. Or you
Right.
play it with something like Puppet Strings and untap it, and there you go, off to the races.
Oh yeah. You're what you're looking for is any kind of untap, and you have Esper. You got plenty of
Oh
untap,
yeah.
and you could just you go crazy at
Blink
some
effects
point.
work too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
play your Ghostly Flicker and play like a Gatekeeper of Malakir. Wait, that doesn't work. Never mind. Wrong cards. Quick
That's
note
right.
before we jump into the top four. These top four are sort of debated. They're all about the same power level. This is just the
Hmm.
order, probably in which you'll see them. What most commonly?
Yeah,
Most commonly. Okay.
I would say so.
All right. Well, number 4 is Ezuri Renegade Leader, because who doesn't love elves?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, everybody. This when you are making a deck, you think about this leader right here. This is the leader that you say, can my deck last against Azuri? If you think it can, then your deck's okay, because you're gonna be spitting out elves because that's what elves do. Elves beget more elves, and he can infinitely give uh, +3/+3 and trample. So that is another thing to consider.
Oh yeah. And even the regeneration is relevant. I
Oh,
mean,
no kidding.
especially in elves where you just have what green mana for days.
Hmm.
You can just protect your whole team. Maelstrom Pulse on elf tokens is basically, well, I wouldn't say it's worthless. You may get a couple, but he'll be able to protect some. And I honestly, I'd be scared facing down Azuri and with the opponent with 10, 15 mana. That's a pretty hefty team.
Yeah, one final note about Ezuri is I would say that this particular commander would be is or will be on a watch list for any future bannings. So just keep that in mind
Yep.
when you're investing in your tiny leaders deck. But still, it's ridiculously powerful.
If you have an unlimited budget and don't mind, hey,
Go for it.
spit out some elves. Number three, we have Anafenza the Foremost, and for some reason, she's bigger than all of the rest. I don't really know why. Um, but this is the other tiny leader that I've actually played because I saw
Yeah.
the video that Brennon did about
Yay,
Anafenza.
videos.
Yay!
Yeah,
And
and Anafenza.
it's just spicy. I mean, you get a 4/4 for 3,
Yep.
the ability to pump up your team, and what? Is
Yeah.
there any real commander other than Alesha who cares too much about the graveyard? I mean,
There are some people that do grab things from the graveyard, but still, you're going to prevent any kind of flashback. You're going to prevent um, anything being targeted from your opponents. It's
well, it's just a creature card. It's not.
yeah. Oh, I'm
It's,
sorry. Yeah,
it's not all spells, but still, I mean, kind of makes Scavenging Ooze a little bit worse when it has nothing to eat,
that is true.
at least. Because, all tiny leaders play Scavenging Ooze. Definitely.
Yeah, if
And
you
the, and the,
can.
yep, in the number two slot, we have Alesha who smiles at death. And this is the one that I just mentioned in regards to Anafenza's ability, and that's because when you're playing an aggressive Mardu deck and you can get your creatures back for very little mana and just
Yes.
keep on swinging, that's just brutal.
Yeah. I would like to point out that this ability it does not require tapping. So if you have any combination of black and white mana, you can just you just go crazy because you don't care if they die. It doesn't matter. You're gonna attack, attack, attack,
Yeah.
attack, attack, attack.
And it's first strike as
Hmm.
well, which means it's really hard to trade off with Alesha in combat. Um, Especially, what if you put pants on her?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
throw on a Civic
Any
Saber, something like that, something cheap.
right. Yeah, and the I believe, gosh, Hero's Blade is that three?
Heroes, I think it might. I don't know.
Hero's Blade. But that I love the. I know it has I think it is three, but it has an equip cost of four, except when a legendary creature enters the battlefield, it just attaches to it.
Yeah, that's also a
Mhm.
favorite Forge card.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like. I believe it's three, but I like that in well, kind of any commander deck if you're playing a lot of legendary creatures.
Especially. Same with this like Godo's Maul or something is the same basic card.
Ah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Um, but anyway, yeah, I mean just a 3/2 for 3 first strike, and I think you can play Mardu Strike Leader in that deck too. Another
Oh
3/2
yeah,
for 3.
because you have the cost right
Yeah.
there. You sure can.
Just pack your deck full of aggressive creatures, and you're off to the races. Lastly on the list, we have some good old Jeskai fun with Shu Yun, the Silent Tempest.
Mm.
Oh my.
This is nuts.
Double strike? Really? Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
and he has
yeah.
prowess.
hmm
So,
Here's another one that you're going to try to put some pants on. Not too many you do, but wow. Any non-creature spell. Just let that.
Planeswalker, Enchantment,
Mhm.
Artifact, you name it, and double
Mm.
strike.
Yeah, that's absolutely nuts. And the thing I like the most here. Okay, let's say you're playing him. You hit with a lightning bolt. You paid three for that lightning bolt, but it doesn't really matter because he's going to be striking in for eight because his prowess trigger happens. Then if he hits, double strike. Yay!
Yay. Just double strike is, once again, it's just one of those things where you stick some kind of repeatable, efficient mechanic onto a creature that's pretty good by itself,
hmm
and that's what makes the tiny leaders general happen. And he's in Jeskai colors too. And there are a lot of instants and sorceries in Jeskai that you can play, and you can play Monastery Mentor too.
Oh yes,
That
just the the fact I love the fact that their activated cost makes these three color. You don't necessarily have to play all three colors, but you just enough to get your triggers in.
oh yeah,
It's just too great. Oh yeah, and by the way, I looked it up. Hero's Blade is CMC 2.
It's only CMC2. So that's easily something where you could throw it into any of these decks and pants up your general and
Exactly, and it's free pants.
free pants. Going thrift shopping with Peyton and
Hmm.
Brennon. And
That's what
that's
we
all
like
for
to do.
this. That's all for this top 10 list today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see another one, you can request the list. And thank you, Brennon, for joining me for this.
Anytime.
All right. We'll see you guys later.